I had exactly $14.62 in my checking account when the blue envelope arrived under my apartment door, with a brass hotel key taped to the front and a USB drive sealed inside a pharmacy bag. My brother Grant had stolen $873,640 from my father's trust while I was recovering from surgery and told the whole family I had signed everything away. The signature was notarized, the deed was recorded, and the escrow account was already empty. I should have been angry. Instead, I dropped a mug in the sink because my left hand still shook when I was tired. The note inside said, "Play this before the Harbor Club Gala, or they keep everything." That night, I learned my father had built justice into the paperwork before he died. Let me take you back. 3 weeks earlier, I was sitting in a plastic chair outside a physical therapy clinic in Charleston, South Carolina, trying to button my coat with fingers that still didn't fully obey me. My surgeon called it normal nerve irritation after cervical spine surgery. Normal meant I could walk, but not far. Normal meant pain without drama. Normal meant I could smile when people asked how I was doing, and then grip the bathroom counter until the room stopped tilting. My phone rang while I was waiting for the pharmacy to open. It was Russell Price, the estate attorney who had handled my father's trust for 20 years. Russell said, "Nora, I need you to come to my office today." I said, "I have therapy, then a prescription refill." His voice lowered. "If you miss this, you lose everything." That line didn't sound like Russell. He was 71, allergic to urgency, and once spent 9 minutes explaining why blue ink was better than black ink for original signatures. For him to say everything meant something had already gone wrong. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. My father, Arthur Whitaker, had owned the Whitaker House, a small historic inn near the Battery, with white columns, gas lanterns, and a courtyard my mother planted before cancer made her too tired to kneel. After she died, Dad turned the inn into something quieter than a business. He hosted veterans' dinners, paid for local nursing scholarships, and kept room 214 free for families coming into Charleston for hospital treatments. Grant called all of that sentimental leakage. Grant was my older brother by 4 years. Polished in the way men become polished when nobody ever tells them no. He had the good hair, the law degree he never finished, and a talent for saying cruel things with a soft voice. I was the daughter who fixed burst pipes at midnight, balanced vendor invoices, and drove Dad to chemo without posting a single photo about sacrifice. Our stepmother Celeste entered the family when Dad was 64 and lonely enough to mistake elegance for warmth. She wore pearl earrings to breakfast and treated waitstaff like furniture with pulse. Grant loved her immediately, because she loved hierarchy, and in her hierarchy, I was useful, but not equal. The first time I realized I was the scapegoat, I was 27, standing in the inn kitchen after a storm flooded the wine cellar. I had spent 6 hours with 2 maintenance guys moving boxes, calling insurance, and saving what we could. Grant arrived after lunch in loafers, looked at the soaked floor and said, "Dad, this is what happens when you let Nora handle operations without supervision." Dad didn't defend me fast enough. That was the part that stayed. Not Grant's words. The pause. Years later, Celeste made it cleaner. During a Christmas dinner, she raised her glass and said, "Grant inherited Arthur's mind. Nora inherited his tolerance for labor." Everyone laughed because they thought it was affectionate. I remember Dad looking down at his plate. I remember pretending I needed more ice. There are humiliations that don't explode. They settle. They become sediment. You build your adult life on top of them, and then one day somebody digs. When Dad got sick the second time, Grant became attentive in public. He posted about legacy, family values, stewardship. He took photos with Dad in the courtyard and captioned them like campaign literature. But he never stayed through the nights when Dad's breathing changed. He never cleaned the portable oxygen tube. He never argued with Medicare over a denied bed rail. I did those things, and I was tired enough to miss what Grant was doing. At Russell's office, the receptionist wouldn't look at me. That told me more than her words could have. Russell met me in the conference room with a file already open. Beside him sat a woman I didn't know, mid-30s, neat suit, calm eyes, laptop open. He introduced her as Maya Renner, a forensic accountant who specialized in estate disputes. I said, "Why is there a forensic accountant?" Maya turned the laptop toward me. There it was. a warranty deed transferring my 49% beneficial interest in Whitaker House Holdings LLC to Low Country Legacy Partners, a company formed 6 days after my surgery. My signature sat at the bottom. Nora Whitaker. Looped N, slightly slanted W, almost perfect. I stared at it so long the letters stopped looking like language. I said, "I didn't sign that." Russell nodded. "I know," Maya said. "The notary stamp belongs to Reena Patel in Mount Pleasant. The document claims she witnessed your signature at 4:12 p.m. on March 8th. I laughed once, but it came out wrong. At 4:12 p.m. on March 8th, I was under anesthesia. Maya clicked another tab. Exactly. Russell slid a second page across the table. Grant used the deed to trigger an escrow release, connected to the proposed Harbor Club redevelopment deal. $873,640 moved out of the trust reserve. My mouth went dry. "Where did it go?" Maya said. 3 accounts. 1 attached to Low Country Legacy Partners. 1 consulting firm controlled by Celeste's nephew. 1 payment marked as reimbursement to Grant. There are moments when betrayal is too large to enter the body all at once. It waits at the door and comes in piece by piece. Grant had not just stolen money. He had stolen standing. He had taken the part of Dad's legacy I was supposed to protect and turned me into the woman who gave it away from a hospital bed. Russell said, "There's more." Of course there was. He opened a folder labeled Gala Program. The Charleston Harbor Preservation Benefit was scheduled for Saturday night at the Harbor Club. Grant would be honored as the new managing partner of Whitaker House Holdings. Celeste would announce a scholarship in Dad's name. The mayor would be there. 2 hospital board members, several donors, a local business reporter. On the printed program, my name appeared under special thanks. Nora Whitaker, former operations consultant. Former. I touched the word with 1 finger. Russell said, "They plan to make the transfer socially irreversible before we can challenge it legally." Maya added, "Public legitimacy can pressure settlement. They create the story first, then dare you to dispute it." I asked, "Can we stop the Gala?" Russell leaned back. "Maybe. But stopping it quietly leaves them room to claim confusion. Letting them speak may give us something better." Maya watched me carefully. Evidence. I wanted to be braver in that room than I was. The truth is, I was exhausted. My neck hurt. My hand trembled. And some old part of me still wanted Grant to explain it in a way that made him less monstrous. That was my flaw. I kept giving people one more chance because I was afraid the final answer would prove I had wasted years loving them. I called Grant from Russell's parking lot. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Nora, I wondered when Russell would panic." I said, "You forged my signature." A small silence. Then he sighed, like I had spilled soup on his tie. Grant said, "You were unwell. Dad's affairs needed leadership. I was in surgery. You were unavailable. Those aren't the same thing." His voice softened. "That was when Grant was most dangerous. You have always confused effort with ownership. Dad let you work around the inn because it gave you purpose, but he knew you couldn't carry it." I closed my eyes. He continued, "Come to the Gala. Smile. Let Celeste announce the scholarship. We'll give you a clean monthly stipend, and you can focus on getting better." I said, "And if I don't?" Grant's answer was gentle. "Then I'll petition for a protective order over your trust distributions based on incapacity concerns. Don't make me say in court what everyone already suspects." There it was. Not a threat screamed in anger. A threat folded into concern. When I hung up, I sat in my car until the pharmacy called to say my prescription was ready. The first folder came that evening from Maya. It contained public records, the forged deed, the LLC formation, escrow wiring instructions, Grant's emails to the title company, Celeste's nephew's consulting invoice. It was enough to smell smoke, not enough to prove who lit the match. The second folder arrived the next morning. It came from an address I didn't recognize, delivered by a courier who asked me to sign with my right hand because the left one was shaking too badly. Inside was a printed screenshot of metadata from the deed PDF. Created by Grant Whitaker. Device: GJW MacBook Pro. Created March 8, 2:37 p.m. Modified March 8, 3:04 p.m. Notarized March 8, 4:12 p.m. Maya called 30 seconds after I sent her a photo. She said, "Nora, where did you get this?" I said, Someone knows. Maya's voice changed. Do not forward this to anyone else. Bring it to Russell. Now. I looked at the courier envelope again. No return address, no name, only a small embossed symbol on the corner. A brass key. The second folder changed everything. At Russell's office, Maya explained metadata like she was teaching me how to see fingerprints in dust. She said, "A forged deed is one thing. A forged deed created on Grant's laptop before the alleged signing is another. It suggests the document existed before the notary event. But we need the original file, or the device," Russell added. "And we need Reena Patel." Reena was the notary. On paper, she was the person who had watched me sign a document while I was unconscious miles away. Maya found her office above a dental supply company in Mount Pleasant. Russell called twice. No answer. By lunchtime, her website was down. That was our first setback. The second came from me. I drove to Whitaker House because I wanted to see the courtyard before Grant turned it into a boutique membership club with valet champagne and no memory. I knew better. Maya told me not to go alone. Russell told me to preserve distance. But grief makes people practical in public and reckless in private. Grant was there with a photographer, standing beneath the old magnolia tree where Dad used to drink coffee. Celeste saw me first. She smiled like she had been expecting an unpleasant delivery. "Nora, darling, you look fragile," I said. "That seems to be your favorite word for women who don't obey you." Grant dismissed the photographer. Then he looked at my collar, my surgical scar half hidden under a silk scarf, and said, "This is why I wanted to handle things gently." I said, "You stole from Dad." Celeste's eyes hardened. "Arthur is gone. Don't use him as a shield for your failure." That one hit. Not because it was true, but because she said his name like she owned even the sound of it. Grant stepped closer. "You're emotional. You're medicated. You're alone. At the gala, I can thank you kindly, or I can expose how unstable you've become. Choose the version of yourself people remember." I should have walked away. Instead, I slapped the printed metadata page against his chest. His face changed for half a second. Not fear, calculation. He glanced at Celeste. She glanced at the security camera above the office door. Then Grant smiled. He said, "You should be careful waving around documents you don't understand. People might ask how you obtained them." By 5 o'clock, his attorney sent Russell a letter accusing me of accessing private company records and harassing family members during a medical recovery. Maya read it, looked at me, and said, "That was the emotional twist he wanted. He needed you to look erratic." I whispered, "I helped him." She said, "Yes, not cruelly, truthfully." Then she said, "Now we stop helping him." Friday afternoon, the blue envelope arrived under my apartment door. The brass key taped to it was old, heavy, and stamped 214, the room Dad kept free. My hands went cold. Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a pharmacy bag from the hospital where I had surgery. On the bag, someone had written, "He visited room 214 when your father was still lucid." The USB contained one video file. At first, it showed the Whitaker House courtyard from an odd angle, half blocked by ivy. I recognized the view from the maintenance shed, where Dad had installed a cheap camera after teenagers kept stealing copper downspouts. The timestamp was 7 months before he died. Dad sat in his wheelchair under the magnolia tree. Beside him stood a woman in navy scrubs. I knew her vaguely as Evelyn Brooks, one of his hospice nurses. Quiet, kind, invisible in the way good caregivers become invisible, because families only remember the crisis, not the hands that steadied it. Dad looked thin, but his eyes were clear. He said, "If Grant tries to move the inn without Nora, he's not confused. He's stealing." My breath caught. Evelyn said, "Arthur, are you sure you want this recorded?" Dad nodded. Russell put the clause in. "I want one more witness." He looked directly toward the hidden camera. "Nora," he said, and my name broke me in half. "You will want to forgive them before they tell the truth." Don't. Mercy without boundaries is just permission. I paused the video because I couldn't see. Maya came over 20 minutes later. Russell came with her. We watched the whole thing in silence. On the recording, Dad explained the canary clause. Russell had built it into the irrevocable trust after Dad found suspicious emails between Grant and a developer. If any beneficiary attempted to transfer, encumber, or dilute trust assets through fraud, coercion, incapacity claims, or undisclosed self-dealing, that beneficiary forfeited all management rights and future distributions. The clause had a name because Dad liked old spy novels. Canary Clause, Russell said softly. He never told me about the video. Maya said, the nurse is the ally. I said, Evelyn? Maya nodded. She's not just a nurse anymore. She's on the hospital foundation board. She'll be at the gala. That was the ally identity twist. The woman Grant would overlook as background was walking into the room as a board member, witness, and donor. The plan changed. We would not stop the gala. We would let Grant take the microphone. Saturday night, Charleston looked expensive and damp. A storm rolled in from the harbor, pushing wind against the harbor club windows hard enough to rattle the glass. Women arrived in satin, men in navy suits, donors under umbrellas, photographers under the portico, trying to protect their lenses. I wore a black dress with a high collar to hide the scar. My left hand still shook, so I carried a small clutch in that hand and let people think it was stillness. Russell waited near the back wall. Maya stood by the audio-visual table, speaking calmly to a technician. Evelyn Brooks sat at a front table beside two hospital trustees. No scrubs tonight. Cream suit, pearl pin, quiet power. Grant saw me and smiled. Celeste leaned in as I passed. Brave of you to come, I said. I'm learning the difference between brave and finished. She blinked once. The program began with polite applause. A preservation chair spoke about legacy. A councilman spoke about responsible development. Then Celeste took the stage and described my father as a visionary who trusted Grant to modernize what the rest of us could only maintain. The rest of us. I felt Maya glance at me. I kept my face calm. Grant stepped up after her. He looked perfect beneath the warm lights. Grief tailored into a tuxedo. Theft polished into stewardship. Grant said, my father believed family was not about entitlement. It was about capacity. Small laugh from the crowd. He continued, some people loved the inn emotionally. I loved it responsibly. That was for me. Then he lifted his glass. Tonight, we announced the Whitaker Renewal Initiative, funded through decisive estate restructuring, and guided by my father's confidence in me. The room applauded. Then the lights went out. Not fully, just a storm flicker. Long enough for everyone to gasp, short enough for the emergency system to click on. The big screen behind Grant blinked, froze, then shifted to the Harbor Club logo. Maya looked at me from the AV table. The technician stepped back. Pattern interrupt. When the lights steadied, Grant chuckled. Even the weather wants drama. Then the screen changed. Not to Dad's video, not yet. First, a deed appeared. My forged signature enlarged across the ballroom wall. Grant's smile tightened. Maya had insisted on order. Small reveal, then bigger, then nuclear. Russell walked toward the stage. He said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Russell Price. I represent the Arthur Whitaker Irrevocable Trust. A legal correction must be made before any public fundraising continues. Grant said, Russell, this is inappropriate. Russell said, so is a forged deed. The room went quiet in layers. Maya clicked once.